When I was born, the name for what I was did not exist. They called me Nymph, assuming I would be like my mother and aunts and thousand cousins. Least of the lesser goddesses, our powers were so modest they could scarcely ensure our eternities. We spoke to fish and nurtured flowers, coaxed drops from the clouds or salt from the waves. That word, nymph, paced out the length and breadth of our futures. In our language, it means not just goddess, but bride. My mother was one of them, a naiad, guardian of the fountains and streams. She caught my father's eye when he came to visit the halls of her own father, Oceanus. Helios and Oceanus were often at each other's tables in those days. They were cousins and equal in age, though they did not look it. My father glowed bright and just forged bronze, and Oceanus had been born with rheumy eyes and a white beard in his lap. Yet they were both Titans, and preferred each other's company to those new squeaking gods upon Olympus who had not seen the making of the world. Oceanus's palace was a great wonder, set deep in the earth's rock. Its high-arched halls were gilded, the stone floors smoothed by centuries of divine feet. Through every room ran the faint sound of Oceanos River, source of the world's fresh waters, so you could not tell where it ended and the rock bed began. On its banks grew grass and soft gray flowers. And also the unnumbered children of Oceanos, naiads and nymphs and river gods, otter sleek, laughing, their faces bright against the dusky air. They passed golden goblets among themselves and wrestled, playing games of love. In their midst, outshining all that lily beauty, sat my mother. That, friends, is the opening of Circe by Madeline Miller. This is a book that I just finished reading, and let me tell you, I am a fan. I had heard high praise on both this and the Song of Achilles. I still have Song of Achilles sitting on my shelf, but this one I was able to download as an audio and listen to it over the course of the last week and a half, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Um, Retellings are not an uncommon thing to run into across literature. In fact, much of what is medieval literature is full of retellings of things and spinning things in new ways. Just take a look at King Arthur, for example. There's lots of different versions of the Arthurian story that would be retold and retold, expanded on, twisted along the way, even as early as the medieval writers. So I love a good retelling. And it's been a long time, far too long, since I've read those three works on the shelf up there behind me. But in spite of all that, so many of the names, the places, the events were very familiar to me. It was all coming back quickly. The stories of the Greek gods and goddesses and their feats and the different heroes and heroines and all the events. I mean, this has got Icarus makes an appearance in there. You have Perseus. You've got all sorts of people that make cameos, whether big or small, throughout the book. But all of it centers around Circe, and she is the daughter of Helios, so the god, the Titan that draws the chariot through the sky, representing the sun. And she spends a long time lingering in her father's hall, being basically viewed as the useless child. All of that does change over the course of time. There's a series of events. Circe discovers that she's not completely without any sort of use or power, and things really, really take off in fun and interesting ways. If you know anything about Circe, you probably know some of the things that will appear in the story. If you don't and like to be surprised, I'm going to keep this spoiler-free for that very purpose. But just know, if you hear the name Circe and you think, well, is it going to? It probably does. I had forgotten a lot of the Circe story. I still haven't gone to look it up after the fact, but so many familiar names, places, events. appear throughout this entire book. It is a quick and easy read. I say that having listened to the audio, but having listened to the audio, I know that this is one of those quick and easy, almost on the verge of being a young adult level of reading speed. Um, those that read both adult and young adult fiction probably know exactly what I'm saying, that it tends to just have a flow that you're able to get going at a faster rate than you would with a longer, denser adult novel. And I think that works in its favor for this. It makes it appeal to a broader audience, certainly. You don't need to know anything major about Greek mythology to go in and thoroughly enjoy this. If your only background to these people, these legends, is from something like Percy Jackson and that series, you'd be perfectly okay. Um, it doesn't center as much on the gods of Olympus, although many of them do get mentioned and some of them make appearances throughout, but on some of the older titans that were overthrown by the Olympians. But it provides a really interesting dynamic, and it has me super excited to get into the Song of Achilles at some point in time. Uh, Perhaps a month where I'm getting ahead on things and I've got some time to go and hit something in between during that month. I'll try to squeeze it in. I've got a reserve placed on the audiobook on that, and that's like 21 weeks. I don't know why Circe had no wait and the Song of Achilles did have such an extensive wait, but I'm looking forward to diving into that. I've heard Ariadne, not by Madeline Miller, but another Greek myth retelling, is supposed to be really good, and I'm all on board for this. I mean, sign me up. If you want to do Greek myth retellings, great. I'm here for that. Better yet, if you want to do some Norse myth retellings, Madeline Miller, sign me up. I mean, I'd love to have something like this where Thor and Loki and Frey and Freya and Odin and all of them are making appearances, because I think that would just be a fantastic book to read and enjoy. It's got me excited about mythology again. It has me excited to want to dive into those three books sometime in the future. I don't know if I'll be able to fit those into this year, but I sure would love to pull down all three of those and revisit them to just re-immerse myself in the ancient Greek and all of those tales. And I mean, those are masterpieces in literature and essential reading for anybody. But if you're intimidated by those and haven't read those and want a place to start to find out if you'll even be interested in the stories, the myths, you can't do worse than picking up something like Circe and seeing how that is. Now, they aren't going to read anything alike, but it'll give you a background on some of these things before diving into something like those. Um, this is a very solid 4-star for me. Not a 5-star. I mean, it didn't blow me away, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Would gladly revisit it at any point in time. I'm looking forward to getting into the others. So definitely check out Circe. It has my seal of approval on it. It is a good, fast, fun read that is sure to spark an interest in some of these deep roots of mythology.